Hi, Mrs. Sanford. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm just keeping busy with my work and my kids.
Well, I know it can be busy, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm glad you can make it. I just wanted to go over Cody's test scores. As you know, Cody took the Iowa Test of Basic Skills on November 8th and took the place over the course, and that test took place over a course of 3 days. This test is an achievement test, which basically they're given frequently to see what the child has been learning over the course of their education, and they're more specifically given to see if they're gaining the knowledge each year to ensure that they're going to be ready for the next grade level. Before we begin, I want to highlight that this test is somewhat a snapshot of Cody's knowledge. Several factors in the classroom also contribute to what they've learned, and I have Cody's portfolio here so you can see what he's been learning in the classroom as well.
Okay.
At the top of the page are the demographics related to your child. We're going to start by looking at the top portion, which is called the norm reference portion. What this means is that before the test was given to the public, there were several tests given to a norm group of students based off of different learning abilities, based off socioeconomic status, race, gender, demographics, such as that. This group of students is the national comparison that Cody's compared to.
Mm-hmm.
As you scan the norm reference portion of the results, do you see any questions about what's being tested?
No.
Okay, great. If you see any questions as I continue, just feel free to ask me, and I'll let you know about those.
Okay.
The subjects of this are broken up into categories. As you see here, it says core total, which covers the basics of reading, language, and math. And at the bottom, you'll see we have composite, and this score contains the core subjects as well as social studies and science. Within all these subjects are subtests that are included in each of them. An example of the subtest would be here in reading. We have vocabulary and reading comprehension. Now, as we look down at the norm reference portion of the results, there are several abbreviations for things. We have SS to start off with. SS stands for it's the abbreviation for standard score. If we look at the bell curve handout, I have that you can see there's no label on either side for the standard score, and this is because the tests are specific to whatever test is given. So if we wanted to imagine this was in a bell curve, we have to know that the range for the standard score is 181 to 223. So this would be 181, this would be 223. If we look down through Cody's scores, we can see that all his scores all fall within the standard score. What these scores also show is how reliable the results are. So if Cody was to take the test again, these scores should remain within a +3 or -3 deviations if the test is successful in testing what it aims to each time. As we move over, we see GE. This stands for grade equivalent. Before we look at the results, though, the number before the decimal is the number of years, and the number after the decimal is the number of months. So you can go ahead and take a look through these scores here if you like.
I see that Cody is scoring in the 5th grade range on a lot of the subjects. Does this mean that he is ready to go to 5th grade already?
Not necessarily. While these results are excellent, we know that Cody isn't socially or emotionally ready for the content in the next grade, but he's definitely in a great position for understanding what comes next for him in the next grade.
Mm-hmm.
As we continue moving over, you see the different scores. You see NS, and this stands for National Stay 9. This can be found on the bell curve as well right here, and this is just another way to see what your child is learning, and it's probably the simplest way of looking at the test results. As you see on the bell curve, it's broken up into 9 sections. 1 through 3 is typically is below average. 4, 5, and 6 are about average, and 7, 8, and 9 are above average. You can see from Cody's results that he's either scoring within average or above average in the Stay 9 score. An example on Cody's test here is what he obtained is 6 at the Stay 9 level. On the bell curve, this is about the average. The limitations of national Stay 9s that tend to be too general, meaning if we looked at another student's percentile rank, they may be quite different from one another. But at a Stay 9 score, they're similar. Now, the final piece of the norm reference portion of the results is NPR. This stands for National Percentile Rank. Keep in mind that these scores aren't like school grades where a 75 would be a C. Rather, the 75 means that Cody scored a 75 75% above the norm group of students that I mentioned earlier. Take a look at these results and let me know if you have any questions about those.
Nope.
If you look at the bell curve, we can see where the national percentile ranks are placed on the curve. As you can see, that the 50 would be placed in the middle center as the median average, and to the right of the NPR percentages, you can see the percentile rank graph.
Mm-hmm.
This represents the results. The dark shaded line down the center is the average student score, as we saw on the bell curve, and you can see as Cody scored around the same or above and below the national average of the norm group. So these are the average, and this is below or average, or below or greater, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions about the norm reference portion of the test?
No.
Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and move down to the criterion reference scores. Instead of comparing Cody's scores to other students, these results assess what he's learning in specific areas of each subject to see if he's mastered them. I'm going to let you look at those areas and see if you have any questions about those.
What is inference and interpretation?
That's a good question. When children are asked to make an inference or to interpret something from a text, they have to develop an idea of what the author is saying without the author necessarily saying it. For example, if I was reading a book, if the author said Sally was driving down the road and saw flashing lights ahead of her, as she drove closer, she saw an ambulance and fire truck. In this example, the students can interpret that Sally was coming up on a car accident. This is a reading strategy they're familiar with in the class. If you look at Cody's portfolio, you can see some examples that he used. I have a specific example of how he used inferences in his independent reading that he documented in his journal. He's extremely good at making references. And did you have any questions about this?
No, I think I covered it.
Great. The first column is very easy. We have total items, which is the total number of questions. The next is the number attempted by Cody, and as you can see, he puts great effort into attempting the problems rather than leaving them blank. We see that he is trying to attempt the questions. Next is the percent correct by the students. This is not a percentile like earlier, but this is a percent. So for vocabulary, out of the 34 questions he attempted, he got 76% correct. The next column just shows you the percent correct for the norm group, which was 58%. To the right, we have a visual as well, just like the top of these percents. The shaded area is the average of the norm group, and you can see that he is average and above average on many of the specific areas tested in this evaluation. For example, if we look through, we can see that Cody got 100% in measurement for math. Does he like to measure things a lot?
Yes, of course. When I'm cooking stuff, he helps me cook in the kitchen, and I have him help by using the measuring cup to measure with the ingredients.
Okay, that's great. I have some assignments here in the portfolio to show how successful Cody is when we conduct experiments. There are some great activities online that deal with measurement, and Cody can do several measurements at home where he finds the area or perimeter of your house using different measuring tools. It seems that he really loves this aspect of hands-on math. As you look down, do you see any concerns about the scores that you see?
Let's see. Well, I see that he only scored a 17% on words with affixes. And is there anything I can do to help him learn these at home?
There are only 6 specific questions in this area, but children need to be aware of the appropriate affixes. Mm-hmm. A great way to practice at home is to have them write. Create a journal for them to write about their day, and you can see how they're using this specific skill in their writing. You can show them examples in the newspaper or magazine of how to use affixes. The point is to practice, and with many of these areas, it will help the child gain knowledge to master the skill.
I also see that he is above average on a lot of the areas of this test. Are you doing things in the classroom to help keep this going?
Of course, always. Children always want to be challenged when they have mastered a subject. In math, for instance, I will have a problem of the week that each child can see, and it requires multiple steps to solve. And they oftentimes must use things around the class to help solve them. These problem-solving skills are just one way to challenge them in their learning. Do you have any other questions before we finish here? I know I gave you a lot of information.
No, I think that's about it. I will explain this to my husband when I get home, but thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No problem. And before you go, I have a copy of the results along with the handout of the bell curves that we used. I'm more than delighted to work with Cody this year and looking forward to see what is next for him. And you can also take a look at this portfolio before you leave if you want to. Thank you so much for coming.